Hi, welcome to this week's episode of the Wellbeing Show. I'm your host. I was going to say I'm your guest. I'm not. They're my guests. I'm your host, Noel. That tells you I haven't had enough coffee. It's morning for me. I haven't had enough coffee yet. I've got Ben and Rachel with me. Going to talk about the therapeutic benefits of nature, but also horticulture as well, and looking at issues around horticulture therapy. Ben's the CEO of an organisation called Thrive. And Rachel is an academic who's been around since the day of the dinosaurs, apparently, I've heard. He's a
Thanks
fellow
for that.
pterodactyl in the field of health and wellbeing, academic who specializes in the mental health and well-being aspects of nature and horticulture. And so I have to say, and I was saying to them just before the show, I'm really excited about this because I've been a great fan of horticulture therapy since my early days of my practice, working in institutions that had horticulture therapy departments. And I have a horticulture therapist on my service as part of that who's done extraordinary work with people with long-term mental health problems. So working in sort of small institutions now. So I'm a great fan. So there's an open door. How are you both doing? How are you doing, Rachel? You've got
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Yes. Bit
recovering a little bit.
croaky. Pardon?
Recovering a little bit, I hear.
Yes, I am. I'm not 100%, but delighted to be here nevertheless.
Great to have you here. What sort of squirrel is that behind your head?
It's a red squirrel, I think. It's one of my wildlife calendars. So even if it's raining outside or I can't see what's going on, I've still got pictures of nature and plants everywhere because it's, as we're here today, good for our well-being.
Absolutely. I've seen red squirrels in the wild up in Scotland. It was great. I was up in the Cairngorms, and there's a wildlife reserve for red squirrels there. They've been reintroduced, and I've been up on the hills walking and came down, and a squirrel came, and they're gorgeous reds.
They
They are
are. They're smaller than I thought they'd be.
tiny
I was
little things.
expecting,
That's right.
to be the size of grey squirrels, of course, that we see all the time. But yes, much smaller.
Yeah, those American Yankee invading grey squirrels. That's what they are.
Yes.
So that's what I tell all my American friends. Hey Ben, how you doing, mate?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Enjoying the fact that the weather's warming up a little bit, and yeah, sun hopefully is going to come out fairly soon. I live down in Southampton, and yeah, we've got some pretty good weather today. So yeah, pleased about that.
Are you going to get out today, or are you stuck slaving away in the office all day?
No, I'll get out. So I'm working from home today. I'll get out and do sort of my normal walk around about lunchtime. Just go out, we've got a bit of woodland behind our house, and that's kind of what I like to do, is get out just for 10, 20 minutes and just go and enjoy the trees, yeah, maybe 20 minutes, just walking back, and just helps to refresh me really.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely.
And that's key. I mean, that's just, I mean, one of the things I think about sort of nature and our well-being, it's just great. Most of us can access nature in some way, shape, and form. And I think one of the this is what I always say, apologize if you've heard it before, but one of the things that I think was good that came out of COVID, or not sure how many great things there were, but one of the things that did come out of COVID is quite how much people were relying on their nature time whilst we were all in lockdown, being able to, as Ben said, go out and see some trees, even look out of the window, growing flowers on your rooftop, or on your window box, being able to feed birds. The contact with nature that we had kept a lot of us sane through very, very difficult times when we were all sort of locked down and more isolated than we were before. So sort of in a way, it's made this, so as you say, Noel, you said that, horticultural therapy and using nature for mental health isn't a new thing for you. But, up until sort of fairly recently, and even still now for some people, they don't understand that nature can be good for you. You don't necessarily have to be an avid nature lover to get the benefits from nature. Just being outside and having some contact with nature can be enormously beneficial, and people now get that a bit more since we've all been locked down, and that's a really good thing. It makes our job easier, and I think especially for clinicians, if they do end up suggesting some nature time, you know, their patients aren't necessarily felt that they're being sort of fobbed off. They see it as an actual solution rather than a sort of a hippie idea, if you like.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm sort of, as a clinician used to treating people, I get a bit frustrated about that model, to be honest. So wait until somebody needs treatment. I'm much prefer the idea of having a lifestyle that promotes health and well-being. And the way I think of it is the way I think it was Prince Harry said it, mental fitness being akin to physical fitness, in the sense of there are things, physical fitness is not something that happens just overnight. It's something that you work at over a period of time by changing your behavior. And he would argue that you have a similar type of mental fitness. So you can get involved in a series of behaviors over time, which will improve your sort of well-being. You're both nodding. Ben, were you nodding at that? Go on. What do you think about that concept?
Absolutely, I think it's absolutely right that, you know, prevention is far more, you know,
Right.
is much more where we need to be rather than just looking at treating causes, don't we? And I think in terms of time in nature for that kind of mental health benefit, we know that when people spend time in nature, they get kind of a restorative benefit from it.
Absolutely.
Kind of reduction of stress, and kind of we know that you can see kind of reduction in depression and anxiety as well from kind of time in nature, and from, you know, what we're particularly interested in, which is gardening, and doing that, you know, as part of our daily lives in the same way that you might do physical activity is the right way to go. I think the other thing, which is of course well known but important to remember, is the relationship between physical health and mental health as well. And actually undertaking physical activity, whether that's a walk in nature or doing some gardening, is really good for our mental health as well, and supports our brain health. So yeah, doing the mental health, doing the physical together, and doing that in nature can have compounding benefits for us.
The first thing I'd like
Yeah.
And first, I'm going to just deconstruct this word nature a little bit, because I think it's become a thing, nature. And it maybe is a word that has associations that we're not talking about. So when you say nature, what do you mean by nature? What is nature?
It can be all sorts of things, really, and nature is one of those things. You're right, we say nature, and that depending on your own personal perspective, that can conjure up different ideas. Do I mean massive nature, like, you know, standing on the edge of the Grand Canyon, something really wild and you know, so almost unattainable for most of us most of the time, or do we mean, you know, urban parks? Do we mean, and I think the answer is nature. It's sort of, we say outdoors possibly, but we know that we can bring the outdoors indoors. We've all got house plants and that sort of thing. So I think it's and it's about access, and you know, going back to this whole question about prevention right through to treatment, of course, you know, if you can access nature and you feel all right about doing that, you're happy enough to go out into nature on your own or whatever, and build in healthy lifestyles that involve your sort of dose of nature, like Ben's nature walk at lunchtime or whatever, then that's great. But you know, if you are, as you know, if you're suffering from poor mental health at some point in your life, sometimes just going outdoors can be a real challenge. And the great thing about the sort of the nature-based, I'm going to say interventions, I think nature-based opportunities that we have in the UK, is that we've got a whole load of nature that we can access by ourselves, even in urban areas. Obviously some areas are better than others, but you know, most of us are lucky enough to be able to access nature if we feel okay. But then of course, as you know, right through to the treatment end, you know, you might need a bit of support. If I've got sort of mild anxiety or something, I might feel incredibly nervous about going to the park, whereas going to a sort of community growing program might help me, because I can pop in, volunteer, pop out again, and there's like-minded people and people there to support me with the nature activities in case I don't know how to garden or anything, right through to if you're sort of less well and you have a diagnosis, and as part of a care or a rehabilitation program, you can be involved with horticultural therapy, or other nature-based therapies or therapeutic activities where you are working in a much more supported setting rather, with people who understand and can support you through your journey. And that's the great thing about nature versus some of the clinical interventions, I think. And I'm not for 1 minute suggesting that we don't need the clinical as well, but we can offer something right across somebody's mental health journey. And as life, sometimes we end up feeling a bit better, and we think, oh yes, actually I do now feel okay to access nature on my own, and I'm going to incorporate it into my lifestyle. And then life can throw you a massive curveball. You can have a bereavement or a period of ill health or whatever it is, and you can then need more support. And we're really lucky in this country to have all sorts of nature-based opportunities for people to use or to be referred into as and when they need. And that's amazing.
Think more broadly about that word, I guess, and just think, where is my nature? Is it, have I brought it into my home because I'm doing some plants and growing them? Is it in my garden? Is it in the box on my balcony? Is it in my local park? Is it climbing Mount Everest? I wouldn't suggest climbing Mount Everest to start off with, but so it's a broad spectrum, I guess, is what you're saying.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's also about tuning into that, noticing nature. I remember reading some research. It was looking at it was Canadian research. I don't know if it's been replicated, but it was looking at mindfulness and nature therapy, and whether going into a green space enhanced mindfulness, because often people put mindfulness with that, because there's a similar process, I think, when you go into green space in terms of shifts neurologically to the ones that happen in mindful training. But the research, what was interesting about the research wasn't so much that, but was they have a tentative suggestion that noticing a tree while you're standing at the bus stop is really, really good for your mental health. And I wondered what you thought about that. Is that real, do you think, that if you bring your mind to just a tree while you're waiting to commute into work, that you're going to get some of that sort of what I call biophilic effect?
I think there's all sorts of theories that underpin what's going on here, I think, right from sort of attention restoration theory, psychoevolutionary theory, all sorts of sort of fancy named theories to talk about how nature can help that happen. And I think it's true. I think the good thing about nature and mindfulness particularly is that nature can be so absorbing, and it can be distracting. So it's easier to find something to focus on and to help you be there in the present than it is sometimes in other scenarios. But I mean, one of the things that I love about it personally is if you are having a really crappy day and you've had back-to-back meetings, or things aren't going the way that you plan, a short walk, being able to I can literally step off the boat and within 2 seconds I've been distracted by something that I can see. And if you really look at it and sort of just focusing in on it, and then you start noticing other things, you're like, oh, what's that sound, what's that smell, and all of this, and it can be really absorbing. And that sort of being able to absorb yourself in something else takes away the busyness and the active stuff that's going on in your brain. And we know sort of physiologically as well that being outside in nature can increase your endorphins and serotonin levels, reduce your cortisol. So there's all sorts of sort of wacky research, well, it's not wacky research, but all sorts of research out there that shows how this is working in practice. So it's not, and the published literature back that up as well in terms of what you can do in nature. And I think a lot of people who support individuals to get out in nature sort of harness this. It's that sort of inherent ability of nature to do that, and you can sort of focus it in
It's available.
Yes, it's
Just available,
available.
you don't have to do anything for it, right? Ben,
Totally.
you're gonna go and walk in your local forest or woods later, particularly after having to talk to me. I know that's very stressful, so I would recommend going to do anything that de-stresses you after this. But you said you were very clear about the benefits. You will feel good. And we underestimate the importance of feeling good. I think sort of like we get overly complicated about it. If it feels good, it's probably all right to do. And why not? Why not do things that make you feel good? Is it because of that you came in to Thrive, or was it you noticed it more after you came to Thrive? I'm just interested in sort of your, if you like, personal professional relationship to this.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, in terms of where I've come from, my background is very much working with people. You know, I spent a long time after being in school working in retail. There's lots of connection with people there, but it's all orientated around generating an income and money and all those sorts of things. I wanted to do something meaningful that helped people, and so went into the charity sector and worked there. And you know, I'm a passionate gardener. I enjoy, you know, the allotment that I have and those sorts of things. And saw the opportunity to bring both things together in Thrive. And you know, Thrive is a fantastic organization, you know, really working to enable people to improve their health and well-being through, you know, from a very wide range of different backgrounds and settings, and using gardening to help them to do that, and particularly kind of therapeutic gardening in kind of a guided way, helping people to get the best out of gardening. Yeah.
Well, I'm old enough to remember when we still had lots of allotments, and I remember all the old guys going off to allotments and all that sort of stuff. So, and it still happens. These days, wars happen over who owns an allotment in London. I'm telling you, there are battle lines around it. But I grew up with my stepfather taught me how to garden, and I remember as a kid when I first saw Brussels sprouts growing and on those stalks, and how fascinated I was by the fact that Brussels sprouts grew on stalks. And I gardened a lot as a kid, and one of the memories I still have that is one of the most amazing memories of my childhood was my mum worked in a burger bar or something, and she moved into schools catering and stuff. But anyway, she was in a sort of restaurant in the middle of Birmingham, which is where I grew up. And they phoned me up one day and said, "We've run out of lettuce. Will you bring us one of your lettuces?" And of course they hadn't run out of lettuces. But it was one of the most wonderful memories I have is getting on the bus with one of the lettuces I'd grown, and taking it into my mum in the shop that she had, and the sense of achievement and wonder and awe and all that sort of stuff. And it's a fantastic memory for me of being involved in nature, being involved in gardening, growing things and nurturing things. Super memory. What did you get out of gardening, Ben? What was it that it gave you as a person, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, just to pick up on the things that you've highlighted there. So you picked up two kind of key points. One is the connection people have with their families or their histories. People often talk about gardening with a grandparent, talk about the smells that they remember from you know, earlier stages of life, and how that can connect us back, but also can give us that positivity. The other one you highlighted on there is the sort of sense of achievement that you can get through gardening. And I think for a lot of us, with the activities that we do, you go to the gym, and what result can you see from that in terms of benefit or change? Actually, you do something in the garden and someone sees it, they notice it, they celebrate it. You've done the physical activity, you've done something good for your mental health, but you've also got that positive sense of achievement, and somebody else can celebrate it with you. So yeah, there's some really nice things that are quite unique about gardening in the additional kind of positive bumps that we get as a result of that. But for me in gardening, you know, I absolutely love, I quite enjoy growing flowers and kind of the beauty, and that as well is something quite powerful about gardening. Through you know, number of years prior to having kids, so my engagement with the allotment has tailed off since we've had the kids.
Don't bring it very public. I can't say, no, I'm there every week, I promise you.
No, it's a hard thing to do when you've got you know, other commitments, and that's why you get different demographics engaging with allotments, and it can be challenging at other times. But even a little bit of gardening can help. But when I was really engaged with it, you know, growing veg was really where I was, particularly kind of soft fruit and things like that. That right. Gave us. because sometimes you think, well, another real great thing about gardening is that it can actually be it can be challenging, and you might not succeed the first time, and therefore that sense of success and achievement is that little bit more, because actually it didn't go well. The slugs ate it, or the crow pecked at it, or a woodlice ate something, or a mouse ate your sweet corn, or whatever it was, and you get this kind of collective sense of everybody fighting together to achieve across an allotment, to achieve growing something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I was talking to a friend, just thinking about slugs. A friend the other day, we were off on a walk and we noticed some new flowers in a new building where I live in Hackney. And they have some really dark purple flowers. And she said, "Oh, our slugs have eaten all of ours that were dark purple." And she was telling me about this video her and her partner have made of the slugs destroying their plants. And sort of and just that's an amusing part of their life. And as I was sent us the video. And it's these types of conversations are extraordinary. And that thing of, like, we were wandering around where we live, and just again, oh, I hadn't seen that before. Oh, I hadn't seen that before. And taking moments to stop and talk and chat and share experiences and having a laugh about what we now call her BDSM slugs. I'm going to get her to send me the video. I wish I'd had it and we could all have a look at it together. There's also, just around the corner from me, in a small place called Butterfield Green, which is a small piece of grassy area, and then there's a walkway in between it and the next bit of it. And on that walkway, there's a community garden where they're growing apples. They've put some holes in logs for bees to be there, and they're preserving some of the wild plants and flowers, and sort of have little signs up saying we're not doing anything with this. This is a good area for beetles. And what I notice is that every single family stops there.
Mm.
Every single child wants to know about this stuff, and they stop their parents, their poor parents who probably want to drag them off to somewhere because we've got to get you to school and stuff. And it becomes, without any effort whatsoever, it becomes a community hub. It's a space that people start to negotiate having relationships with, which is extraordinary to watch. It's really extraordinary. What's your experience of that in terms of these community spaces and sort of what people tell you about that?
Who would you like to answer that one? Ben, do you want to have a go?
Just jump in. Just jump in.
You can pick in. So social connection is a huge value that we look at, and it's a kind of primary driver of the benefits of gardening is
Okay.
the impact there. So the work that we do at Thrive is slightly different to community gardening. So we have people with more defined and complex needs, and we bring them into a kind of a safe social environment where they can engage with the support of a practitioner. And the practitioner one of the real challenges for the practitioner is keeping that social environment kind of healthy and safe and supportive and facilitating that. Community gardens are brilliant as well for a lower level of need in terms of those.
We'll come back to community gardens. I want to hone in on what you're talking about. Let's talk about that, because I'm really interested in the impact of this stuff on people. Are you talking about people with complex and long-term mental health issues who may have been in institutional care, Section 3 and all that sort of stuff? Is that the type?
So yeah, we've been doing quite a bit of work on this actually, and Rachel's been working on a paper that demonstrates the different levels of mental health challenges that people face.
Right, great.
Different kinds of intervention that you might need at those different levels of needs. So we do have people not from Thrive, but from other kind of horticultural therapy and social and therapeutic horticulture programs working in kind of more secure units. The Thrive programs would be one step removed, maybe two steps removed from that, working with people who do have a defined mental illness, but aren't in that kind of sort of setting, and perhaps been referred on from that setting for the next stage and for support to kind of connect back into the community. So I can tell you, stories about
Sorry, you're breaking up a little bit, Ben.
So I don't know whether to jump in there
You jump in, Rachel, while he buffers.
while he gets back to
While he buffers somewhere in the ether. So tell us, so I have a sense from what Ben's saying. Sorry, oh, it sounds very strange.
It's
Can you hear me
like,
okay, Rachel?
I can hear you fine. Yes, I get a sort of, then I'll get a repeat of what I'm saying. So it's all sounding a little odd now.
Okay, let's just see if this stops in a second. All right, here we go. I think we're normalizing. It's just part of a live stream. There you go. Oh, that sounds better. Got it now?
Yeah.
Ben?
So I mean,
So, Rachel, let me ask you a specific question then. It sounds like you're doing some research on looking at people going from positive to rehabilitation. Is that right?
Yes, I mean, it's not just me. We're sort of looking at how we can sort of communicate the different options that are available for people at different stages of a sort of mental health journey. And one of the NHS teams in Nottingham have developed, and they did this for the Green Social Prescribing pilot programme, in order to help people understand the level of need that you might have yourself, that you might be able to support or whatever. They developed a sort of 5 levels of mental health. So if you imagine down here at level 0 is somebody who might be taking steps themselves to protect their health and well-being, you know, rather like some of these, you know, we'll go take ourselves for a healthy walk or something like that, you know, so right through to people with a complex and long-term need, like you were talking about, who might be in a clinical setting or a secure setting of some kind. And yeah, so, and we've got sort of different steps along the way. And so the nature-based therapies sit somewhere in this bit here. So if you imagine you've got Thrive and Social and Horticultural Therapy, sort of nearly up to that clinical session, but not quite, although we know that in the clinical and secure settings we have other professionals that come in and work. And then so you'd have Social and Therapeutic Horticulture about here, if you can imagine. Then you've got sort of community gardening a little bit down here, and then through down to your sort of own garden or walk in parks at the bottom. And this sort of stepped approach, obviously if you're working to support people in these different levels, then you know, you have to have different skills, different training and that sort of thing, mainly for safeguarding, mainly to make sure that, you know, if I have a complex need, that I'm going to get the support that I need, and nothing that, you know, and as Ben was saying earlier about the work of the practitioner is to make that make that space safe, make the dynamics work, make sure that your you know, that your clients or your participants feel sort of happy to be involved. And there's all sorts of different things, and yeah, across the different levels.
Let me interrupt, and because I know as an academic you're going to be so full of knowledge. And you didn't warn me before the show, but so I guess to put it in straightforward terms, this work is taken very seriously as having direct impact clinically. It can have a very positive, strong impact clinically, and as well as the more like softer focus end of the wellbeing scale. So it goes from direct targeted interventions within hospital secure settings to wellbeing in the community settings. Is that right?
That's absolutely right. And then you have a range of nature-based sort of interventions that will help people sort of in the middle of that, and depending on their need and the key thing. So, you know, we know from the published literature that it's this sort of interaction of 3 things. So if you imagine 3 circles with a sweet spot in the middle, one of them is this contact with nature. So if you're outside in nature, you can have feelings of calm, psychological, you know, historical powers, that sort of thing to help you feel better. And if you wrap that up with a social, a lot of the gardening and other nature-based interventions it's sort of, you're working as a group with other people, so you've got that really important social connection as well. So that's really important to just make you feel like you belong, which is inherent to well-being. And it's that connection to other people, other like-minded people, just not feeling isolated, basically. And we know that loneliness is at the root of a lot of people's sort of ill health, and so that sort of helps that. So that's two of the circles, and the other circle is very often sort of meaning. It's sort of meaningful activity. So gardening, if you're growing something, as you say, the sense of achievement, watching something grow from a little seed into flowers or vegetables or whatever. And there's also, because we have social and therapeutic horticulture, but we also have sort of farming interventions, animal interventions, doing something meaningful as well. And if you wrap all of that up together, what you get in the middle is really quite powerful, and it sort of addresses all the facets. If you're looking at a sort of theoretical underpinning of what makes up our well-being, it's multifaceted. It takes lots of things. So we've got to look at all sorts of different things that make us feel better, and gardening as sort of one of those examples that does that. Hi Ben, you're back.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. No, it's just, it happens. And like I said to you before the show started, we just deal with whatever it is. Are you okay, Rachel? I'm really worried about your sort of...
It's all right. That's all right. If I have to start coughing madly, I'll put my mute on to save you all.
Just be careful though, you're still recovering, mate.
I will.
Even though
I get too excited about nature. That's what my problem is.
I'm with you. Look, if I'm going to be blunt about it, nature saved my ass, to be honest, in a way that other things didn't. That's the truth. And I can't encourage people enough to engage with this resource. I want to throw in some other sort of subjects and talking about some more ecological stuff as well, and the things, because I'm really into things like my brain has now just stopped functioning, lifestyle medicine, which is an evidence-based approach to looking at health and well-being in terms of the 4 pillars of, but one of them being diet and nature and diet, and our horticulture in the sense of the industry of it as well. And thinking about what we put in our bodies. I'm not a radical vegan or vegetarian. I eat meat, but as a health practitioner, I try and reduce the amount of meat that I eat and increase the amount of plant life that I eat. And that is for health reasons. And that would have, if more of us did that, that would have quite a radical impact on our environment as well, and our sort of farming practices and so on. So we may get into that. We'll see. Coming back to, so just before, while you were off sorting out the Wi-Fi, Ben, Rachel was describing this sort of range of interventions, from secure units to doing your own gardening or sort of sorting out the plants in your home, and the connection between those things, because they're all, if you like, horticulture, they're all nature activities and they're all a benefit to us. And I was making the point that, this stuff is taken very seriously by practitioners as well. So people like me, I know the benefits. I've absolutely seen it, not just personally, but professionally. I've seen transformations in people's lives who I thought were lost. They would be bouncing in and out of wards for the rest of their lives. They went and did a gardening project after a few years, never stabilized, completely stabilized. I mean, it's transformational stuff that I've seen, and I'm a great fan of it. So we were sort of like just looking at that. When I come back, I was talking about you're working, if you like, in the rehabilitative area, people who may have been diagnosed with, say, depression or something with their GP, or is it hospital referrals? Can you define sort of where your referral base is and who the type of people that you're working with, the type of results that you're getting? Do you mind?
Yeah, of course, absolutely. So particularly this is in relation to a programme that we have in London, and we've recently got started up in Birmingham. So working in Battersea Park in London and Kings Heath Park in Birmingham.
Both of them. I grew up next to Kingsley.
Oh, really? Oh, nice. Yeah. So we're in...
Norton.
Oh, yeah. Well, so we're in the TV gardens in Kings Heath.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah,
We've got that area, and it's fantastic. and we've just got a mental health program started there, called Growing Out, if you're interested in it, and local. But yeah, it really, the referrals come from a range of places. So we will get people self-referring. We will be working with people with depression, with anxiety. We've had people with PTSD. We've had people referred from secure units. We get people referred through GPs, through link workers, and other healthcare professionals as well. So there's little percentages across all of those different areas, and really we're working with people with defined health needs. Another kind of the sort of end of the spectrum that I suspect Rachel was talking about, kind of more general, for general public, for those who are able to garden in their own space and time. We've actually recently, over the last couple of years, been building a kind of information service on our website called Get Gardening, which promotes the use of gardening for health and well-being. And there's masses of advice and information there. So information about why gardening is good for your mental health, connection, gardening and the 5 ways to well-being, as well as different activities and ideas and things that you can do in the garden, step-by-step guides. And then, as well as that, what's really great and I think quite unique about our information service, Get Gardening, is some condition-specific guides that we've got. So kind of going slightly further for people that say might have a lung condition or might have experienced a specific mental health condition. How do you garden if you're you've got a lung condition? What are the things to bear in mind? Or if you're going through the menopause, how do you involve gardening to help you to go through that stage of life? And so there's different bits of information there for very specific conditions, if you're gardening in a wheelchair or another kind of physical disability with say sight loss. So those sorts of kind of experiences might put a barrier for people to be able to access gardening and to gain the benefits of time in nature, but that's where we're putting this information to say, here's some help and advice for people in those situations, how they too can experience the benefits.
Brilliant, thank you. Rachel, please.
I think that's really crucial what Ben's talking about reducing some of the barriers. One of the things that we've sort of found, I mean, I used to work a lot with care farming, which is another nature-based intervention, and sometimes it's getting over the either real or perceived barriers to getting people involved. Worries about, oh, will I get dirty? Will I get muddy? Will I, or what happens if I'm doing this, and I need a wee or whatever. It's about putting the information out there to help people know what they're getting into, sometimes as well, to help break down those barriers. And I think one of the issues that the sector, I think, has had as a whole is only really seeing the link for gardening and outdoorsy type interventions for people who have said, oh, I'd like to do something outside, and then they think about it. But quite often those access to outdoor type therapies or nature-based therapies aren't the first go-to for a lot of our clinicians or a lot of people giving the advice. And they will put the signposting in place, or we'll have a look at the opportunities available if you say, oh, what I need is to be outside. But of course, a lot of people haven't had that opportunity. And we also find across the sector that sometimes it's the people who've had very little access to nature who can quite often have transformative effects by gardening. I was actually at the International Plant Symposium that Thrive ran in Reading last week, and one of the lovely things was I was sort of walking a fairly uninspired route from the railway station to the hotel, and I just, whilst wheeling my little suitcase along sort of bumpy pavements, came across this young lad, and it must have been his mum and an auntie or something, and he was clutching a plastic pint glass with this little bit of soil and this very gangly plant, a sort of seedling that he'd obviously grown from seed, and he was carrying this thing like it was the Holy Grail, and he was just so proud of it. And it made me wonder whether that was the first time he'd grown anything. He was just so pleased, And I think, you know, the more people we can give access to growing things, to nature, the better, really, whether it's your first time growing a seed or whether it's helping you to feel better or to recover from your, you know, an episode of mental ill health. It's so important, and we've really got to work harder at making, you know, we should all be able to go to our GP and say, you know, and the GP to think, right, what this person might need is maybe there's a need for an antidepressant. I'm not saying we have to ditch them all, or maybe some talking therapies, but it would be lovely if the clinician also thought, oh, what about a spot of social and therapeutic horticulture? Wonder whether this could help my patient. And you know, that's where we're working towards. I think it needs to be one of the toolbox of options that people go to say, here, try this, you know, to help you feel better.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are structural issues around the health service and stuff like that you're bringing up, and there really are. We are a treatment model rather than preventative model. It's desperately wrong of our health service. We need to move into a preventative model more. Whilst we're in this sort of deficit treatment model, one of the things I think is important, I wonder what both of you think about this, is developing the research for the NICE guidelines so that these things become primary options rather than additional options. So I'm thinking about, for example, the new research that's coming out using exercise as a primary treatment for depression. Okay, not as a secondary behavioral activation through a CBT program, but as a primary treatment. And I'm going to ask both of you, do you think the evidence base is strong enough so that within social prescribing, for example, which you've mentioned, Rachel, we would be confident in saying that going to a gardening program for a mental health problem is a primary treatment? It's not an addition to psychopharmacology. It's not an addition to psychological interventions. Primarily in itself, it will treat you. Would you say that that is an appropriate statement to make at this stage in the evidence base, or not?
I think for me that's a very broad spectrum of people. And
Okay.
so where we as an organization would be is that we're looking to medical professionals to consider and look at the individuals who are coming to them and that are in front of them, and to prescribe for that individual. What we know as an organization is that the people coming to us, we have set kind of inclusion criteria as to whether or not we'll accept someone based on whether we feel we're able to work with them. So we'll do a secondary look. But those that do come to us, we see huge benefits in physical health, mental health, social connection. We see all of that benefit from people spending time in nature and all the things that we've been talking about. The research base is growing, and that's something that we're looking at, and we're looking at kind of literature reviews and kind of looking at what kind of evidence base we might need and what the gaps are. And part of our work as an organization is working with other organizations and researchers to try to identify those gaps and to get more programs commissioned by health providers. But yeah, there's a little way to go, but we obviously see it every day in the garden when we're there, so we see the evidence, but the kind of scientific rigor and evidence.
We need the RCTs. Rachel, I would be interested in knowing where you're coming from with that.
Well, I think Ben's hit the nail on the head, really. I mean, and as you say, we need more randomized controlled trials for specific conditions. We've got all sorts of bits of research, you know, that are out there looking at different types of nature or gardening provision for people with different needs, not just mental health. You know, we know that that the nature-based sector provides sessions and interventions for people with all sorts of mental health needs, physical
and diabetes, all sorts of stuff, and it would be absolutely
disabilities, learning disability, autism, veterans, with, you know, right across the board. And so it's very, you know, what we would need. I mean, we do need randomized controlled trials, but obviously it's the money for research. Randomized controlled trials and even feasibility studies cost an awful lot of money, and it's got to have.
You're only going to get it if Health Trust takes it on board, to be honest. They're the only ones who, if you can find a sort of local health trust that want to invest in research.
Well, and the political will for that sort of research, you know, if compared to, for example, developing a new drug, you know, to treat a condition. There is a lot more will there to do a sort of a test to see if it works. We've got evidence out there, and I think one of the crucial, I mean, I do remember a number of years ago at the King's Fund report, quite a long time ago now, where somebody said, you know, all of this talk about evidence, we know that accessing a properly run you know, gardening intervention or a nature-based intervention where the safeguarding's in place, you know, this talking about the support, there's the adequate support. If you look at it in terms of the do no harm, we know that it's not going to do you harm to take part in it. And yes, you're likely to get some benefits, whereas that's not something you can say with some of the sort of medical trials, you know, in terms of the drug interventions. But
yeah, I
you know,
mean,
so
and also,
the
I think
evidence is
the
there.
whole pharmacology movement is about making profit anyway. So
Yes,
it's difficult to
exactly.
make a profit out of a garden, to be like a community garden. It
Yeah.
really is like scaling that up to enterprise level. But actually, that's what makes it accessible, I think, is to as a project that people can get involved in. And I'm really interested as a clinician and as a human being in those things that people can get access to, which they don't need to be specialists and experts at. And my feeling is you don't need to be an expert to go and walk around your local park or go in your wheelchair around your local. You don't need to be an expert in how to walk around a park to walk around a park. And you will get the benefit from walking around the park, right?
And there's so many resources out there, you know, as well. You know, there's obviously the wonderful resources on the Thrive website. There's another organisation, Social Farms and Gardens, that's mapped out all the community gardens that are available in your area. There are oodles of resources that signpost people to different sort of nature-based activities. There's a whole load of work around nature connection, how to connect yourself with nature, because that's also in itself is really sort of associated with better mental health. You know, having a feeling of connection to nature, which very often comes from doing something meaningful in nature like gardening, has a beneficial effect on your mental health as well. And there are so many resources out there to help people get that access without necessarily being referred. So, you know, there's a number of things we can do ourselves without having to get a diagnosis. But if we have, you know, got to the stage where we've got a diagnosis and we do need support, there are all sorts of opportunities around and interventions where people who know what they're doing, they've got their safeguarding sorted out, their risk assessment, they've, as Ben was saying about a trained practitioner, somebody who has mental health first aid training and, you know, policies and procedures in place, so that if you do have what I would call a wobble on site, you know, that there are people there who can help you either there and then or signpost you to where you can get additional support should you need it. And I think that's the crucial thing that clinicians worry about, I think, is because when they sort of look over the fence and you see, if you're not an expert in this field, you look around and there are a myriad of different nature-based things that people saying, right, we do therapeutic this, that and the other, which may or may not be true. But the crucial thing is making sure that you match the person's need with an organization who can adequately support those needs. And as something that Ben was talking about with Thrive, their inclusion and exclusion criteria, is that you know, it's all right for an organization to say, look, we would really love to help you, but we can't adequately support your needs here, but why not go along to this organization? You know, it's part of being able to signpost to the best intervention for your need. And I think that's something that a lot of GPs have struggled with a little bit with social prescribing, is, you know, wanting to have that reassurance, if you like, that if they're referring somebody on to a nature-based intervention, that that intervention is properly set up to adequately support your needs.
Ben, let me ask you as the CEO then. You are the CEO, right?
Yes. Yeah.
You look shocked when I said that. Am I?
Yeah, only from the last about 4 months. So
Oh, right, that's why you look shocked.
yeah,
Still
getting used to it.
So uh, if you were to give advice to, say, a GP or a private sector therapist who's looking for safe organizations, apart from going to Thrive, what
Yeah.
sort of things would you say they should check out to make sure that these organizations are reasonable, safe, accountable, et cetera, et cetera? What would be the sort of pointers you'd give?
Yeah, sure. So in terms of green care organisations, there's a great intervention by Social Farms and Gardens called the Green Care Quality Mark.
Oh, brilliant.
Social Farms and Gardens are enabling organisations to go through that and to get kind of that mark for their organisation. So if an organisation's got that, you can be confident that they've got safeguarding procedures and health and safety and the insurances and all those sorts of things that they need. So you can look for that mark. You can look for other kinds of marks and kind of ways of looking at that. If they haven't got that, then it's things like safeguarding policies, health and safety, insurances, and particularly for those individuals leading it, which is where Thrive is really invested, is the training for people delivering those things. And people who are working, I think there's a tendency to think, if I've got training in horticulture, then I can lead a horticulture program. But what Thrive is doing is training practitioners to be professional in the way that they're using horticulture to help people with defined needs, to lead a guided intervention with clear goals and clear kind of setup, and to adapt gardening tasks to maximize the potential benefits for those engaging with it. So if someone's done a Thrive course, at a level 5 Thrive course or along those lines, or other courses that are out there that might be similar, then do look at that and understand what training does that individual have, and are they safe to support the people that I'm referring in.
And so to folks, that's brilliant, Ben. That's perfect answer for me. This is all I need to know. So for people that are listening, we are coming to the end of the show, folks. For people that are listening, you don't need to make notes. I promise you, underneath the video is a link to all this stuff. And it will be there for you. So you can just click on the link, get the phone numbers and all this sort of stuff. I guess what I would emphasize is that this is a very professional field. It's a very serious field that takes itself seriously. It's working with people with significant vulnerabilities often, and it doesn't play games with that. Having said all of that serious stuff, I would encourage people to go out in the park and enjoy your local resources, what they are. I mean, I think that like just touching upon the ecological stuff, it sort of that gets all the headlines, right? But there are really good reasons why people should protect their natural environment, wherever their natural environment is, for self-interest reasons, to be honest, because a world without a natural environment is a disaster, an absolute disaster. Rachel, go on.
Absolutely. I think, we shouldn't think of ourselves as separate from nature. We're part of it. It's part of us. We're almost rediscovering the fact that we are, that getting back to nature is crucial for our mental health. Actually, it's something that our ancestors knew only too well, being immersed in nature all the time. And we're quite removed from it sometimes. And, it doesn't, we can all do our own little bit for nature, whether you're growing something on a window box or creating huge swathes of wildflowers for biodiversity and insect life. We need it all, and the more, if we can engender a seed, sorry about the parallels here, but if you can get that seed growing of love for nature and how it makes you feel better, then we're more likely to protect it. If we're connected to nature, then we're connected to wanting to save it. And if we don't do that, our humankind is doomed. I think we've got to look after nature.
It's really interesting because we have to finish. We're going to sort of leave us on this sort of note. I remember when I grew up, we thought of green spaces. We were told they were dangerous and to avoid them as a kid. That was, you don't go there because you're going to get mugged. That's where somebody will knife you and stuff like that. And these days, it's an interesting thing to note that the Metropolitan Police invest in building parks, because if you go around the area of where a park is, violent crime will drop by 20% just because the park is there. Because of that connecting thing that nature does, it connects us, and automatically And if you feel connected to other people, you're less likely to punch them in the face and steal something from them. That's the truth, folks. Do you know what I mean? It's a fact, okay? And the more connected we are with each other, the better life is, without a doubt. It's been really genuine pleasure to have both of you on. Sorry about the technical issues, but as I said, we just dealt with it, and I think the sort of messages have got across. It's an absolute joy for me to have this conversation this morning, having got back from my run around the park just before and not had my shower yet. So I'm sort of going to jump in the shower and wash off after my run. A real pleasure. We'll make sure all your contact details are here. You two stay here. Listen, I hope everybody has found that useful and informative. The professionals that are involved, I really can't, who are watching, I really can't tell you, if you're not getting involved in nature therapy, if you're not getting involved in horticulture therapy, what are you doing? I can't, you know, if your practice does not involve that, there is something wrong with your practice. Same with if your practice doesn't involve getting people out doing exercise, there's something wrong with your practice. You're out of date. If you're a member of the public, really treasure your natural spaces, wherever they are, on your window box, in your park, in your garden. They are the most wonderful resource ever. So I hope you've all enjoyed that, and I'll see you all at the next show. You two stay here. We're going to say goodbye for now, and I'll see you all at the next Wellbeing show. Bye bye for now.
Yeah.